Well, good morning,
Morning.
everyone. I want to welcome you all to our discussion on Isaiah from the Seventh-day Adventist Quarterly, lesson 11 this week. My name is David Diaz. This is Pastor Isaac. We're from the Joshua Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Joshua, Texas, in North Texas. And we are so blessed that you are able to watch.
Amen.
We get so much, I think, from these discussions ourselves.
We do.
But it is... hopefully a blessing to anyone who watches.
It's just it's an added blessing knowing that others are watching and we hope enjoying and being blessed.
Well, Pastor, we can go ahead and get started. If you want to start off with prayer, I'm going to start the timer there.
All right, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
Our Father in heaven, our best friend and our Savior, Jesus Christ, Lord, we thank you so much for this chance that David and I have to come together and to study, Lord, to study such an important part of your word in the book of Isaiah. And though we may have read it numerous times, Lord, as we sit together tonight and we discuss and we study, I ask that you would join us with the presence of your Holy Spirit, that you would impress new truths on our minds and hearts, that we would walk away from this and have something that we put into practice on a daily basis, more than just a new truth. Father, I ask the same thing for those who study with us as they watch this video, no matter when or where it takes place. I ask that you would do the same for them. Lord, we thank you, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Lesson 11. This is lesson 11 of 13. It's just this week, next week, and the week after. And then Isaiah is a long book.
Yeah, and we have moved through it at lightning speed. Yes.
Fast. Sometimes taking 3-4 chapters a week.
I dare say a little bit too fast, but I understand in a quarter, we've only got 3 months.
It's hopefully enough to whet one's appetite to really get into it.
Yes, and so that this wouldn't be the only time that they studied Isaiah. They might just continue through the year.
And it's an important, super important book in the Bible, and especially for Christians, I think. Mm-hmm. It's an Old Testament book. Wow, it's just...
Now, even though it's an Old Testament book, and sometimes I think there's perhaps a mistaken idea that the Old Testament is the vengeance, the God of wrath and anger. But clearly from this chapter, at least in Isaiah 58, I know we study several different chapters here, but Isaiah 58 clearly speaks to a God of compassion. Compassion so deep that we can't even comprehend his compassion. So this is one of my favorites.
Awesome. Right. And the title, again, man, they have some good titles.
Yes, they do.
Waging Love. It's a play on words. Waging love.
Absolutely.
Instead of waging war, waging love. Yeah. So it's like make love, not war.
Right.
Back in the 60s, I guess.
60s and 70s. Yeah.
So, but that does bring me to a question. Is love a weapon?
Yes. And I don't think weapon in the traditional sense, we think of a weapon something that causes harm.
Yes.
And I would say no, if that's traditional sense, but weapon in the sense that it is the most powerful force ever to be wielded against anything.
I would agree definitely with that.
All right.
That powerful force. The memory text is from Isaiah 58, verse 10. If you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as the noonday. There's a lot to unpack just in that verse.
Boy, there is.
Extend your soul to the hungry. Why wouldn't you give them food? Why are you giving them your soul? Are we talking about traditionally hungry, like I want to eat something?
I think it could go either way, but in this, that's a good question. I don't think it's traditional hunger. In this particular instance, no, I don't.
So in this verse, then, what is Isaiah describing? Because there's, in symbolisms and sometimes in prophetic vision, you use terms that are understandable to the reader.
Sure.
To make understood the message that you're trying to bring across. And a lot of times it's trying to describe feelings or
almost to signify something much deeper. But you have to use a word that they are familiar with.
Yes.
So everyone understands hunger.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, hopefully not too many, but yes, hunger.
Well, at some point during the day, we all get hungry, and we have to
one
eat.
of the conditions of life. Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Sure.
Um,
But this though, yeah, I think you brought up a good point.
extend your soul
Yeah.
to the hungry. What do you think they might be hungry for or feel? For me, it's an urge for something. Like right now, I could have an ice cream cone, right? But
There's never a wrong time for that. Okay.
even in Snowmageddon.
Absolutely.
But if you really want something, you have this craving, and I've described it before as a God-shaped hole in our hearts that
Okay.
we have this urge, this need, this hunger to fill.
Now, let me ask you a question based on that, because I do believe that 100%. Have you ever been engaged in a work or a project that really consumed your attention, your time, and you might have worked right through lunchtime? Okay?
Yeah.
And you're keeping going. You think, oh yeah, okay, maybe I should stop. I'll stop later. And you go and you go and you go, and you find yourself getting frustrated when things aren't working right. You've put 3 or 4, 5, 6 solid hours into this project. When you finally stop and eat, afterwards things go better. So sometimes I would think that people who have all of us have this God-shaped hole in our heart.
Yeah.
But some of us don't know what that hunger feels like. We're not sure.
We don't know what it is, what the craving is.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And so if we don't know what it is, how do we satisfy it?
Right.
Yeah. So absolutely, there are hungry people. I think the world over, hungry people, but many don't recognize the hunger for what it is.
Well, and the next phrase, and satisfy the afflicted soul. So if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, I think that's maybe where my question came from.
Okay.
Or where my comparison about hunger came from, because you're satisfying the afflicted soul. It is an afflicted soul that hungers for God. We are just like you described. We just don't know. It's almost a desperation, or it can become a desperation that we don't know what to fill that hole with.
Right.
Sometimes, and we're going to get into that because
all right.
that's a need that Christians can help with.
It is absolutely, but we have to have it first in order to extend that to someone else who has that. If we're just extending empty platitudes or meaningless religious rituals or rules without any foundation, that doesn't satisfy anybody.
Yeah.
So we must have that love, that compassion, that satisfaction in our heart first that God provides in order to extend it, or in our soul.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going into the introduction
Sure.
on Sabbath School, a Jewish cantor or worship leader and his wife who lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, began receiving threatening and obscene phone calls. They discovered the calls came from a leader of an American hate group, the Ku Klux Klan. Knowing his identity, they could have turned him into the police, but they decided on a more radical approach.
Yes, they did.
When they learned that he was crippled, the man making the phone calls, they showed up at his door with dinner. He was utterly flabbergasted. And then the best sentence.
Yes.
His hatred melted before their love.
A prime example of love being simply the most powerful force there is.
And one would think, because hate is pretty powerful.
Hate is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It causes so much damage, and yet
the couple visiting him and the friendship. See, the couple visiting him.
Kept visiting.
Sorry. The couple kept visiting him, and the friendship grew. He even thought of becoming Jewish.
Isn't that incredible?
Talk about a 180.
Because of love. Not because of proselytization, like, oh, let me teach you the truth. No, because of love.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they did, and here's, well, I almost hesitate to bring this up because in the story they are Jewish.
Sure.
But I was going to say they did what Christ would have done.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, since you bring that up, and there
Okay.
was some hesitancy,
Yeah.
is there a problem with a Muslim doing what Christ would have done? Is there a problem with a Hindu doing what Christ? I don't think so.
No.
You
No.
know,
No.
We know that all good things come from the Father,
Yes.
regardless of whether we recognize that it's coming from the Father or not. That's where it comes from, because we're created in His image.
There's a joke, and it's a fill-in-the-blank joke.
Okay.
About, and I'm just going to put a Seventh-day Adventist in this joke.
All right.
Seventh-day Adventist who makes it to heaven, and he's being shown around. Here's the Baptist. Here's the Methodist.
Sure.
And what about that? It looks like a gated community. Well, that's where the Adventists are, but don't let them know because they think they're the only ones
The
here.
only ones, yes.
So
I've heard that with various
and
groups.
So I don't remember where I heard this, but there will be people in heaven who have never even heard the name Jesus.
Amen.
They will just be there because they are good people.
Well, okay.
Okay.
Yes, and I do believe that the Holy Spirit can introduce Jesus Christ to people
Okay.
without ever them knowing His name.
Wow.
Because I don't believe that I have to know the name, the verbal
Right,
name
yeah.
of Jesus Christ in order for God's Holy Spirit to introduce Him in person to my heart, to my mind.
Wow.
So yes, I do believe people
Yeah.
will be there, not just because of their own goodness, but because of their goodness that comes from an internal relationship with Christ, whether they knew His name or not.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
A sincere, a genuine
Absolutely.
relationship.
Absolutely.
Let's learn more about this important spiritual principle as depicted by the prophet Isaiah. The first verse is Isaiah 55, 1 through 7.
Did you already move on? Is that
Sunday.
Sundays?
Yeah.
Can I read
Yeah,
this
yeah.
right before we go to Sunday? There's a passage in there. It's from Isaiah 58, 6 and 7. And I just absolutely love this.
Okay.
Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke. Now, normally, when we think of fasting, and perhaps you're familiar with the word fasting, perhaps not, but when I hear the word fasting, I think of depriving yourself of something that you normally eat, drink, do, media fasting, something like that.
Well, like the word breakfast. You
Like,
break the fast.
You're breaking your fast of the
from
night.
overnight,
Right,
yeah.
right, okay.
Depriving yourself from food, you're putting food in your belly.
Yeah, here, this is a totally different type of fast that God's talking about.
Yeah.
And He says, is not this the fast that I choose? So rather than the fast that I might choose to try to please God or whatever reason I'm doing that fast, God says, wait. Let me tell you about the fast that I'm choosing. And He ends with, is it not to share your bread with the hungry? And of course it goes on. That's out of Isaiah 58. And it finishes with this. It says, ironically, the couple in Lincoln kept such a fast by sharing their feast with a hungry oppressor, thereby setting him free from his own bonds of unjust prejudice. And frankly, and we're going to read more of that passage as we go through, but that is one of my favorite passages. I just love it, David.
And I apologize. I skipped that whole paragraph, didn't
Oh,
I?
well,
So I went
that's
down
all
to
right.
it. Okay, Isaiah 55, 1 through 7. This is for Sunday. And yes, we will get back to that fasting part because that is fascinating, at least to me. 55, 1 through 7.
All right.
And that's on page 2. There we go. I'm going to read from the New Living Translation.
Okay.
Is anyone thirsty? Come and drink. Even if you have no money, come take your choice of wine or milk. It's all free. Why spend your money on food that does not give you strength? Why pay for food that does you no good? Listen to me, and you will eat what is good. You will enjoy the finest food. Come to me with your ears wide open. Listen, and you will find life. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. I will give you all the unfailing love I promised to David. See how I used him to display my power among the peoples. I made him a leader among the nations. You also will command nations who do not know. You do not know. And people unknown to you will come running to obey, because I, the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, have made you glorious. Seek the Lord while you can find him. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked change their ways and banish the very thought of doing wrong. Let them turn to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them. Yes, turn to our God, for he will forgive generously. That forgive generously. New King James Version, abundantly pardon, and also the New American Standard. And then the Message says,
what does that say?
Lavish with forgiveness. God is lavish with forgiveness.
I think of lavish in terms of earthly things, a king or just an incredible abundance, this overflowing. And that right there, that's God with his forgiveness.
Yes.
Overflowing, abundant, to the point where we can't understand how much there is.
I wrote a note on here after I read the verses for the first time. This is so hard for so many to understand.
Yes, I have that down here. But yes.
Hard to understand this, that it's free.
Right.
And it's interesting because it says, why would you buy food?
Exactly.
Why pay for food that does you no good?
Yes. Yep. And yet we do it our whole life.
All the time.
And not necessarily, not just food, but I think that's a kind of a euphemism, right? For many, many things in life that we seek to fill that hole.
That hole, yeah.
And it does us no good.
Yeah. And it's I guess the hard part really is that it's free, because it uses some weird language. Buy or spend money on, or let's see. I think I got it from the New King James Version.
Okay.
Buy something with no money. If you're paying money for it, okay, to you it's worth something.
Right.
What's the price of love?
The price or the cost? Okay.
That's a very interesting distinction you've just brought up. And I guess because I answered this question, if it was just one person, if it was just me, would Christ have come down?
Absolutely.
And the answer is yes. And then I said same price. But it's also the same cost, or I was worth the same for Jesus to come down. So the price of love, the cost of love, you can't put really a value on it.
You really cannot. And it boggles my mind that one person, just one, would have been worth his life.
Yeah.
Had Adam said, no, I'm not going to eat it, just a big what if, Christ would have sacrificed himself for Eve.
Yeah.
We tend to think of the whole world as being, he did it for everyone.
Yeah.
What an amazing thing. I almost tend to think of it in the opposite way, that it's even more valuable that he would have done it for one person. Well,
and he did it for the whole world.
Sure, absolutely.
But we really have to make that story personal, don't we? He did it for me. And talk about a choke-up feeling sometimes that I would be the one that put him up on that cross, that caused all that suffering.
That, and I guess the flip side of that same coin is, yes, I'm the one that put him up there. I caused that suffering, and yet he thinks I am valuable enough to have done that willingly. He thinks me.
Yeah.
I know me, and I'm not valuable like that. He thinks I am.
Yeah.
Choke up for sure.
And then more of this language that comes in here, and I read from the New Living Translation. Let's see. I will give you all the unfailing love I promised to David. In the New King James Version, it's I will make an everlasting covenant with you, the sure mercies of David. Mercy. How would we define mercy? It's almost like forgiveness.
It's almost like forgiveness, but it's given. See, forgiveness was given to us before we ever accepted it. There was no nothing, no acceptance. and forgiveness was made available to us. And so, yeah, I would think mercy is very much like that. It's given. It's not deserved,
Right.
and nevertheless, it's given.
Well, and that's why they put the word sure in front of it.
Okay.
The sure mercies, because it's not deserved. And so there are unsure mercies, like, oh man, I messed up, and now I have to ask forgiveness. Is he really going to forgive me? I'm not sure. But
Okay.
these are the sure mercies. And I do like the way the New Living Translation translates it is unfailing love. And then the message, sure, solid, enduring love.
Right. The same that I made with David. Yes. Sure. Solid.
Did David deserve mercy?
Oh my. No.
No,
I mean,
no.
Sure, he was repentant, but to murder, first to sleep with a man's wife, then to have him murdered, and then to take that wife as his.
And he's my namesake, so I say this with a lot of, I guess, pain, that he's held up as an example, really, of not what to do in life. But
in many ways,
also as an example of what to do when
Yes.
you do those things when you mess up.
absolutely.
And that is, his heart became contrite, and he came begging God for forgiveness.
Not because he was caught,
And not because he deserved it.
but because he recognized what he had done
Yes.
was wrong.
Wrong.
Period.
Absolutely wrong. Verse 5, I will also command you, you will also command nations you do not know, and peoples unknown to you will come running to obey.
And the reason, because I, the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, have made you glorious. I think that's important to, because we think, well, why would nations that I don't know, why would peoples I don't know come running to me? It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with what he is doing
It's early on
with me.
working in the school where you can see the natural leaders in young people.
Sure.
You know they're going to grow up to lead. And some of them don't realize it.
Yeah.
And some of them don't know how to use it.
Right.
properly.
They're leading, and they don't even realize what they're leading other kids.
And this is God. Sometimes, because He's as God's people, we'll get into this also later on. Also, we have this message, we have this hope, we have this love that just pours out of us from God, pours out of us.
Absolutely.
And people are going to be so curious about this, they're going to come
running.
What is going on over here? Give me some of that.
And the only reason that happens, again, like you said, is because of what God is pouring into us and is what is spilling out of us. Yeah.
Here's another funny turn of phrase.
Sure.
Seek the Lord while you can find him. Or in New King James, seek the Lord while he may be found. Is there a time where he cannot be found? Call upon him while he is near is the next one.
And yet we're told in the New Testament that I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Well, he won't leave us.
So yes, I think that's a very good point here. Okay, which this particular verse, it doesn't really bring that out, but yeah, absolutely.
He won't leave us, but yes, we definitely will leave him.
We can be very far from him, though he is near.
Yeah.
We can still be very far.
We've talked about before, and I guess Isaiah talked about it, where we were described. I say we, his people, Israel, I think, was described as a lowly worm.
Yes.
And we talked about how far away from God can you get? He's up in heaven, and you're a lowly worm.
Right.
So there's no place you can go. You can't be too far. Can we be too late? And if you understand that distinction, because I think we as Adventists believe also that there will come a point of no return. But that's using distance.
Yeah. And I think the difference here is what about on a personal level? Too late on a personal level. To me, that speaks of a continued and practiced response to God's calling to me. God calls to me, and I practice responding by turning my back on him. by refusing to listen to what he is saying. At some point, it will be too late, because if I continue to practice that, I'm going to get very good at that response. So good, in fact, that I may not hear him. Much the way sometimes our children do when we call them, please, it's time to get up. You wake them up the third time. I've woken him. What? I didn't know that you woke me up 2 times before. Well, I did. You weren't listening, or whatever the case is. I think we can do that, and in that sense, yes, it can be too late. But I guess we're the ones who cause it. And I know what you're talking about too with the probation.
I was thinking and referencing even when God sent. I'm trying to remember if it was described as God's hand or God sent an angel to close the door of the ark, Noah's ark.
Yeah, I think it does say the angel of the Lord. I think I'd have to go look.
And when that door closed, it was. I just saw, as a matter of fact, a little cartoon. Is 2 unicorns. And they were saying, one was saying to the other, "There's a storm brewing. Looks like there's a storm brewing." And the other one said, "Yeah, it's a good thing we didn't go on that cruise with your crazy friend Noah." And of course, there's no unicorns anymore.
Sure.
So it's bad decision after bad decision after bad decision without coming back. And again, not too far. Now I'm referencing the thief on the cross. He was so bad he ended up on the cross.
Moments from death.
Yeah. And he still gave his life.
He did.
Or his heart to Jesus.
And what strikes me is the other one witnessed that.
Wow.
And yet it was too late for him.
Yes.
And because the ark, you make a really good point. The door closed on the ark, and at that point it was too late for those people to get on the ark. However, they had chosen not to. They had simply practiced choosing not to listen.
Exactly what you were describing earlier. Yes.
Right. So
they chose not to listen. And
do we say God's cruel for closing the door?
No.
He had to close the door.
They made the decision. There's that free will again thing. They made their own decision.
And the consequence of that decision, of course, was destruction.
Yes. We talked about the next question before already. What is the price for our salvation? 1 Peter 1:18 and 19. You want to read just...
Sure. I'm going to read from the New American Standard. "Knowing that you were not redeemed with perishable things like silver or gold from your futile way of life, inherited from your forefathers, but with precious blood, as a lamb unblemished and spotless, the blood of Christ."
Yes.
The most precious thing in all the universe. There is nothing more precious than the creator of everything.
Wow. Yeah. Silver or gold, generally speaking, can be earned.
Sure, absolutely.
And even if you happen to find it, you kind of have to dig a little bit. So it does cost a little.
It does.
As of a lamb unblemished and spotless, referencing the sanctuary practices.
Absolutely.
Where people presented a lamb,
which was then sacrificed and killed.
Yeah. And the symbolism of laying all your sins on the lamb to be sacrificed.
Right.
The next question: how does Isaiah's approach to salvation compare with that of the New Testament? Ephesians 2:8 and 9. I'm going to read from the Message.
Okay.
"Saving is all his idea and all his work. All we do is trust him enough to let him do it. It's God's gift from start to finish. We don't play the major role. If we did, we'd probably go around bragging that we'd done the whole thing."
I really like the way that's worded.
Lest anyone should boast. We don't want to be bragging around. But it's interesting, the between bragging and testifying.
Yes.
To what God. This week is a week of testimony at our church. I really love those testimonies. Each one, individual story of what God has done for them.
Yeah. So is that boasting? Sure. But what is it boasting about?
Well, I'm trying to remember that cowboy philosopher. It's not bragging if it's true.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think that's the
Paul
difference.
said, hey, if I boast, this is what I want to boast about.
Yeah.
So sure, it's okay to boast.
Yeah. But you're boasting about what God has done for you.
Right.
Not what you have done for
What
yourself.
is the focus? Yeah. What is the focus of the boast? What are people looking at as you're boasting?
Yes. God's gift from start to finish. Oh.
Yeah, that word,
words, yeah.
from start to finish. That's the part that really jumped out at me. It's God's gift from start to finish. There's not a point at which God says, okay, now I've started you up, now you take over because I've taught you how to do it.
Yeah.
No, he's the author and the finisher of our faith.
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay. You have something else?
I do. I wanted to because you brought up a really good point about when we first read in Isaiah 55, verse 1, it was, why is it so difficult for people?
Yes.
And down at the bottom it said from the ancient story of Gilgamesh, who did heroic exploits in a vain search for eternal life, to modern actors who believe in reincarnation. People have tried all kinds of different routes to salvation, but all are fruitless. This is why they need to know about Jesus and what he has accomplished for them at the cross. My question was, why? And I didn't have a really good answer. Why is it so hard to believe in what Scripture has to say about salvation, and yet people will do all of these other things? Salvation, God says, it is free. Here it is. It's my gift to you. And people will turn their back on that and will go about persevering their whole life so that when they die, they can come back as a better thing or something. And
that's the idea, I guess, of eternal life.
Yeah. Just keep coming back better and better until you reach a state of perfection, or whatever the case is. I'm not pointing at one specific instance, but all of these ways that people seek to bring salvation into their lives seem eminently harder than just believing what God said about this free gift.
Well, and I think, it has to do with us as human beings. We got ourselves into this mess. We can get ourselves out of the mess. And we talked about he died for all the world. But the real thing is he died for all the universe. There's a much bigger picture, I think, than what we can see and that we often only consider. And that is that he was accused before the whole universe of being unjust.
Not just on this. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And so he has to prove to the whole universe that he is just.
And why love does win.
Yes.
Versus whatever government Satan has said is better.
There's a term is the taller they are, the harder they fall.
I've heard that.
I think, and maybe this is boasting or bragging, but I hold to the belief that human beings were God's masterpiece. They're crowning creation. Okay?
The Bible does call us that.
Yeah.
You are God's masterpiece.
And so we're way up there. So when human beings fell, they fell low. A long ways. And hard. So now, instead of being the most admired beings of God's creations, we're the most despised. And Christ came to die, not just for the lowliest of all human beings, but for the lowliest of all creation, because of sin. That sin has brought us down so far. I don't know why we continue, because there are people who sure accept other things for free. Now here's the deal with that, because I work in public education.
Okay.
It's hard to get our students to understand the value when you don't have to pay for it, when you're made to do it, to understand the value of a good education. All around the world, everywhere else understands, and they will go through enormous hardships to get an education.
Yeah.
Except in certain places in America where it's free, so it doesn't have value.
It doesn't register as being valuable.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, because a lot of people say, well, Jesus was socialist, and Jesus would have given, would have provided everything for free, which is true, but it didn't come from without for Jesus. It wasn't mandated by the government.
No.
It came from within and it came out.
And it wasn't forced in any way. Like you said,
No.
the word mandated. Yeah, it was not forced, mandated, pressured, simply given out of love. So how, that's the challenge, I guess. How do we help people see the tremendous value it does have, even though it's free?
It's like trying to put a price on a human life. And I'm not talking about slavery.
Sure,
I
hear you.
By any means. I'm talking about what would make you pay more for, say, how do we say this? Okay, why is it more tragic for a young mother to die than a hardened criminal? We tend to assess
We
those,
do.
to compare
We do.
those.
We tend to say, well, this one was more valuable than this one. That's an interesting
And there's a
question.
story, the alabaster jar, where the woman came and put perfume on Jesus'
okay,
feet.
sure.
Well, he was in the home of a Pharisee,
He was. Simon.
and Jesus told him a quick parable. It was really quick, and you could almost lose that parable if you don't study that. And this just came to me today. So
Okay.
this,
All right.
this is one of those
Brand new
those rabbit
material.
trails,
Sure.
that he described a man who had two debtors owing him money. One owed him, say, I'm just putting some values on it, $5. The other owed him $5 million. Right. And the rich man forgave the $5 and he forgave the $5 million. But then the guy who, and I'm trying to remember the right one.
Now
The question was, who
Yes.
had reason, I guess, to love more or to forgive?
Right.
Who was forgiven more?
Yeah.
And the question was,
Or who loved more? I think.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the one that was
yeah,
the one that was forgiven more.
$5
Right.
million.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, then that brings up the widow's two mites. When she gave those two mites, she gave her entire life.
Everything.
When the rich man gave his offering, he gave a fortune, but it was just pocket change for
Fraction.
the poor. Yeah. So whose offering was worth more? And who?
Clearly, the one who gave all.
All.
And I think, it leads me to believe, and this is new too, when you're pointing this out, leads me to believe that God was using that widow woman as an analogy.
Wow.
I mean, Jesus was using that widow woman as an analogy of what God has given.
Yeah.
She gave everything. And that's what God couldn't have given anything more. Simply, he emptied the treasuries of heaven.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
So that still begs the question, though. Why do we assign more value when, if we ask God, he says, no, the hardened criminal, I paid with my son's blood, his death. There is no difference in value in God's eyes.
My sister and I play a game, and I think I've mentioned this before. It's who does mom love more?
That's a terrible game.
And she says, Mom loves me most. And No says, no, Mom loves me more. She even got me a t-shirt, Mom loves me most.
Okay.
But we came to the realization that she really loves our little brother most.
Oh.
And I'll tell you how we came. Because he needs it more. God loves us the exact amount that we need. So absolutely he loves the young mother. And maybe he loves the hardened criminal more because he needs it more.
So to the hardened criminal, that would feel like more because of all the things he has done in his life and is now forgiven of.
Yeah.
The story that Jesus told, the parable.
So
Wow.
maybe we assess value because we crave that same thing. What could make me? Surely I'm better. And who are we trying to convince? Mostly ourselves. Surely I'm better than the man next to me. We're trying to convince ourselves because that we still have that God-shaped hole in our heart. And maybe the hole in my heart is bigger than the hole in this other person's heart, who has started to fill that hole already, who still has a need, who still is seeking truth, who still is seeking, I don't know, I'm going to call it a sense of belonging to something.
So then, how does this correlate then with the statement that Paul says when he says, he speaks of himself as the chief of sinners. Clearly sees a huge need that God has forgiven a vast quantity of sin in Paul's life. Mm-hmm. That he can speak of himself as the chief of sinners.
He was killing Christians in his early career.
Sure.
And
sure.
It's not that God remembers those, mm-hmm. but Paul certainly
does. Mm-hmm.
He wrote about it. And maybe he's the one who was forgiven the more.
So we know what we've been forgiven. And I think at times when we recognize that, that's when we start to see ourselves as more and more valuable in God's eyes. And when we see what we've been forgiven.
Maybe we've just hit on it as far as why do we have such a problem that it's free, or understanding that it's free. It's because when God forgives, he remembers our sins no more.
Okay.
And we struggle with forgiving ourselves, never mind that, then we have to forget.
Yes.
And we don't.
Can't really forget.
Because we mess up again, and it's like, it's not just one more sin.
It's cumulative.
It's cumulative
yes.
for us in our brains. And that's why maybe it's so hard for us to understand. God could wipe all that away. But I can't do it. Why can't I do it? God can wipe all that away.
So rather than us looking at others and trying to judge value, that seems to be much more constructive if we simply look at ourselves and assign value to who I am. Not based on what someone else has done or hasn't done, but how much I have done and how much I have been forgiven for. I don't know.
I put him on that cross, and he came to die for me.
He did.
And that's one of those. I guess in here also, is this the mystery? The mystery of the gospel. But we've spent over 40 minutes.
Okay, and we're on Monday. Okay.
High thoughts and ways. Isaiah 55, 6 through 13. So 55, 6 through 13. And it starts, here it is, on page 5.
Okay.
Seek the Lord while you can find him. And this is overlapping a little bit. Mm-hmm. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked change their ways and banish the very thought of doing wrong. Let them turn to the Lord, that he may have mercy on them. Yes, turn to our God, for he will forgive generously. And this is the New Living Translation. Mm-hmm. My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. The rain and snow come down from the heavens and stay on the ground to water the earth. They cause the grain to grow, producing seed for the farmer and bread for the hungry. It is the same with my word. I send it out, and it always produces fruit. It will accomplish all I want to do, and it will prosper everywhere I send it. You will live in joy and peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song, and the trees of the field will clap their hands. Where once there were thorns, cypress trees will grow. Where nettles grew, myrtles will sprout up. These events will bring great honor to the Lord's name. They will be an everlasting sign of his power and love.
Phenomenal passage there.
For me, right away, starting in verse 10, starting with rain and snow, and they stay to water the ground, that causes the grain to grow, producing seed for the farmer. Okay, finally, there's a man.
Okay.
But then it goes on, and bread for the hungry. Mm-hmm. It is the same with my word. From that whole process,
yes,
it shows the bigger picture that, okay, the farmer puts the seed into the ground and waters it, but it's actually God that makes it grow. Mm-hmm. It's not the farmer; it's the farmer who reaps the harvest.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sure. There's work in farming, absolutely, but and really like the way God contrasts that. He says, all of that stuff I've just talked about just now, on how that all works, you know, that's exactly the way my words work. They will produce fruit.
Yes.
He doesn't even say, I hope they will. They probably will. They might.
They will.
They will produce fruit. In fact, he says they'll do the work, and I'm reading from the message here. They'll do the work that I sent them to do until they complete the assignment I gave them.
The assignment I gave them is in past tense, but that was in Matthew. We're talking about the Great Commission.
Yes, yes, it's true. True.
In Matthew 28. Goes back, the lesson does, to verses 6 through 9, which is seek the Lord while you can find him, and turn to our God and he will forgive generously. We talked about that. That's incredible. I would think, though, forgiving is generous in and of itself, because you don't have to do it.
No.
Or
No,
one does not have to. God doesn't have to do it.
He does not.
But because he's love.
Okay. Okay. So in that sense, then, does he have to?
Yes.
Okay. So there's no outside force pressuring God to forgive because he's God.
Yeah.
But because he's God and love,
Wow.
he has to.
Yeah.
There's no other choice.
Yeah.
The choice lies with us on whether we accept it or not. That's quite a thought.
Yes, the paragraph under there, that the creator of the universe would stoop to clothe himself in humanity, live a life of toil and suffering, only then to die in our behalf, a sacrifice for sin, all in order that he could pardon us and show mercy to us, is a truth that will thrill the hearts of God's created beings for all the ages of eternity. So you and I have marveled at this, what this sentence is describing.
That's true.
But we're going to continue marveling through this.
Yes.
And people, beings, creation, all creation will marvel that this even happened.
And I want to unpack that word you just used, this marvel. Not just be constantly surprised by it. I think there's so much deeper that there will be a new aspect to that love that we will constantly be learning. Always a new aspect, always a new facet, a new, if you think of the way a gem is cut, the more facets it has, the more valuable it is. And to me, it strikes me as an eternal faceted gem, this craziness that is salvation and the love that caused it to happen. We will always find a new facet to marvel at, to be just blown away by. And then there's something new about it, and something new and new and new. So it's no wonder that we'll study it until eternity. After all, God is infinite.
Yes.
So,
they reference Ephesians 6:19 just before that passage or that sentence that I read. And for me, that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel. It's interesting that we want to shout it from the mountaintops, but we're shouting a mystery.
Yeah.
And what is the mystery? Well, just what we described.
Right.
And just what we'll be investigating, I guess, since it's a mystery.
That, like something we've just barely scratched the surface of now.
Yeah.
And yet it's so incredible, just scratching the surface, that we want to shout it. That we can't help but share this. Like, have you heard? Don't you know?
It's an infinite investigation because it's an eternal love, an infinite love.
Yes.
And here's what we're talking about fasting on Tuesday now.
Okay.
And they're talking about fasting in Isaiah 58 verse 3, and actually it's 58 1 through 8.
All right. Shall I read that I'll read that from the New Living. So 1 through 8, right?
Yeah, it's listed 1 through 12, but
we've
got on here, but 1 through 8 is the verses.
Shout with the voice of a trumpet blast. Shout aloud. Don't be timid. Tell my people Israel of their sins. Yet they act so pious. They come to the temple every day. They seem delighted to learn all about me, and they act like a righteous nation that would never abandon the laws of its God. They ask me to take action on their behalf, pretending they want to be near me. We have fasted before you, they say. Why aren't you impressed? We've been very hard on ourselves, and you don't even notice it. I will tell you why. This is God responding now. I will tell you why, I respond. It's because you are fasting to please yourselves. Even while you fast, you keep oppressing your workers. What good is fasting when you keep on fighting and quarreling? This kind of fasting will never get you anywhere with me. You humble yourselves by going through the motions of penance, bowing your heads like reeds bending in the wind. You dress in burlap and cover yourselves with ashes. Is this what you call fasting? Do you really think this will please the Lord? No, this is the kind of fasting I want. Free those who are wrongly imprisoned. Lighten the burden of those who work for you. Let the oppressed go free. And I'm going to pause right there and speak to that, because that reminded me immediately of the story you read at the very beginning. Let the oppressed go free sometimes means freeing the oppressor of what they are oppressed by.
Yeah.
Hatred, prejudice, bigotry.
Yeah.
And the way it was done, the way the Jewish couple did is by showing them love.
Yeah.
They showed their oppressor love. So we keep going though. And remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry. Give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them. And do not hide from relatives who need your help. Then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind.
That's verse 8.
That's verse 8. Okay. I just want to keep going.
Yeah. And those verses, especially starting in verse 6. First of all, what is fasting all about? Why would someone fast?
You know, in the strictly human sense, you might fast to clear your mind and your body of the things that you normally put in, so that you could have a better communion with God.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. Just
all right.
Try to, like when he says, "I shall have no other gods before me." It's like taking away one of those gods.
Just taking food
so
away,
that we can
taking
see God
media,
more clearly.
whatever it is that you're just engorging yourself on.
And usually people say they fast from food and from sleep even.
Sure.
But nowadays they fast from technology. You mentioned.
Technology,
They fast from specifically sugar or soft drinks.
Sure.
Fast from staying late at work. There's so many ways that you can fast. But it's not just that. It's the second part that really counts. I think that as the fast, to come closer to God.
Right. The purpose. What's the purpose?
What's the purpose?
Yeah.
So those verses in starting in verse 6 through 8, where he describes, this is the kind of fasting I want.
Because he described the other type of fasting that people do.
So many.
They want to look good in front of others.
This is one of the things that the rich man and the ones that were praying in the temple. And Jesus saw
the publican and the Pharisee.
And the Pharisee. And the Pharisee specifically said, "I fast so many times a week."
Yes. And he's praying out loud.
Oh, yeah.
Others are hearing him say this.
Dressing in burlap. It's kind of itchy. But you dress in burlap and then go out to show everybody that you dressed in burlap.
Look what I'm doing.
Look, I'm so humble.
Yes. Which is the exact opposite. Look what I'm doing. I'm so humble. Come on. But David, we make fun of that. But how often do we see that?
All the time.
In church.
It is.
And I'm not pointing my fingers at anyone else.
Yeah. It is so hard for anyone to do a good deed and then not tell anyone about
it. It is. I've discovered that even in my own life sometimes, and you're not even trying to boast, but you just want to share. And then I've wondered why do I want to share?
Well, because we want credit.
Yeah.
It goes back to that thing. We want credit because we want to do it ourselves. We want to have a hand in our own salvation. But that's not the way it works.
It is not.
Because in the way that God, and this is God speaking, right? In the way that he describes fasting, it doesn't say anything about me
doesn't
or
look like
you.
anything like this other stuff that was talked about in the previous
It's
verses.
all about
Yes.
someone else.
Yeah.
Freeing those who are wrongly imprisoned, lighten the burden for those who work for you.
Giving of yourself to others
Yes.
in some way.
Yes.
In some way.
Yeah. So it's not an intake; it's an outgiving, I guess.
Yeah. And none of it is done with the intention of drawing attention with the intention of drawing attention to yourself. None of what God describes as a fast that He looks for is done with that intention.
Yes. And I think that's the question: what is the Lord complaining to them about, and what is wrong with their fast?
Yeah.
I think it's just what we described.
Absolutely.
The fasting was made about them.
They were
not about God.
In fact, it says this, and I love the way it reads it. So it seems the people were expecting the Lord to congratulate them for their piety,
Yes.
but they had it all backwards. Practicing self-denial on the Day of Atonement was to express their gratitude and loyalty to Him on the day the high priest went before God to cleanse the sanctuary. And the reason he was cleansing the sanctuary was because the blood that was shed because of what they had done.
Yeah.
So it was gratitude for what God was doing.
Yeah.
Not the attempt to make God see how righteous I have become, but gratitude for God's righteousness and what He's done.
Yes. Okay, I want to save the question at the bottom for homework.
I wondered if we would.
Okay.
That was such a good question.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So Wednesday, the fast fight. And we're not talking about a rapid battle.
No, it was a curious title.
Yeah. 58:6-12. And I think that's where we were.
It was still the
reading,
same.
Yeah.
So
this time it goes through 12. So let's start reading from verse 9.
Okay.
Then when you call, the Lord will answer, "Yes, I am here." He will quickly reply, "Remove the heavy yoke of oppression. Stop pointing your finger and spreading vicious rumors. Feed the hungry and help those in trouble. Then your light will shine out from the darkness, and the darkness around you will be as bright as noon." The Lord will guide you continually, giving you water when you are dry and restoring your strength. You will be like a well-watered garden, like an ever-flowing spring. Some of you will rebuild the deserted ruins of your cities. Then you will be known as a rebuilder of walls and a restorer of homes. Verse 10. Let's go back to verse 10.
All right.
The second part especially. It starts off with feed the hungry and help those in trouble. Then your light will shine out from the darkness. And I'm going to go to New King James Version.
Okay.
Then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as noonday. We talked about just a simple candle can illuminate darkness.
Yes.
That
Darkness flees
Yeah.
from just a simple flame.
Yeah. But can you imagine going from complete darkness to noonday sun?
Blinding. It would.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's my thought. It would just be blinding.
And yet so revealing also.
Yes.
And what I think it's meant to reveal is God's love again. Not that look who's giving you the food, is look who's providing the food, and that's
Right.
That's God.
Right.
Again, referencing that farmer imagery that we had, it all comes from God.
He is the one who produces. Yeah.
Again, yes, beautiful verses, beautiful imagery.
So, and I know we're lagging
That's
behind
okay,
on
that's
time,
good.
but in verse, I wanted to read verse 8 and 9 again,
Okay.
because those two, we put those two. I think they really need to be together, because God, in verse 6, He begins to describe the fast that He wants, not the fast that people want to show Him, but the fast that He's asking for. So He gives that, helping those who are homeless, giving clothes to those in need. Then your salvation will, in verse 8, come like the dawn. Your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. And then verse 9 that you read, then you will call, and the Lord will answer. Yes, I am here. He will quickly reply. He's saying, when we take care of those around us, that's what causes us to grow, that's what he takes notice of, not look how righteous and pious I am. When I am selflessly giving and taking care of those around me, God says,
that's the fast.
Yeah.
That's the fast.
And he takes notice.
Yes.
And we call and he says, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here for you. Yeah. That's phenomenal.
The lesson then on Wednesday references a couple other verses. I want to read them from King James.
Okay.
And the king will answer and say to them, this is Matthew 25:40, and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me.
I wish we could read the whole passage, but that's the pertinent part right there. Though.
Actually, we kind of did. The Isaiah verses as far as what the true fast was.
True. You're right.
This is what the king was telling his people, that this is what you should do: feed the hungry. Or he said, he made it personal. That I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink.
Yeah.
I was in prison and you visited me.
And what did they say though when he tells them this?
When did we do this?
They're confused.
They didn't even realize they were doing it.
You know what I think of when I read this passage? I think of Paul on the road to Damascus. And Jesus says, and now this is a little bit in the negative sense, but it's exactly the same concept here. Jesus, Paul says, who are you, Lord? And he says, you've been persecuting me. Well, Paul was only persecuting the Christians, but Jesus so closely identifies with people that when Paul persecutes humans, Jesus says, you are persecuting me. And this is the positive side of things. Exact same thing here. Yeah. When he tells those who've been taking care of those around him, they say, well, we didn't. When did we take care of you? When you took care of those around me. I am flabbergasted, David, that Jesus so closely identifies with humanity that when we take care of someone in need, it's the same thing as doing it for Christ.
I think in a practical sense, when you do it the right way, the fast that God wants,
right?
I'm going to bring food to the hungry, and they say thank you. You say, instead of you're welcome, say praise God. And so you are doing it for God, for the King, as it were, because you're bringing glory to His name, not to yours. So you are ministering to God in that way. Then that when you bring food to Him, you bring glory to God. James 1:27, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. Can
I read that same verse from the Message?
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite, from the New King James. This is one of my absolute favorite passages. I love the book of James because it's so practical. It's practical Christianity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read this from the passage, from the Message. Real religion, the kind, and I love this, the kind that passes muster before God the Father, not mustard, muster, is this: reach out to the homeless and the loveless in their plight, and guard against corruption from the godless world. We are supposed to be in the mud, yet still guarding ourselves from the corruption, but in the mud, in the trenches. And James says this is real religion, or New King James, pure and undefiled, or the Living, pure and genuine. And it makes me think there's been a lot of religion in the world that was not pure and genuine.
Exactly. It specifically identifies this religion as pure and undefiled.
Yes.
And that was the point I was going to bring up too.
Oh, okay.
That means there is such a thing as impure and defiled religion.
Yes.
Which is the fast that he doesn't want, that he described. Right. When you do all these things,
so that others can see your righteousness.
So that others can see.
Wow.
It used to be, I'm going to say, especially back in the 80s, not to speak badly of the 80s, but people would dress up, in their best and then some, to go to church. And we call it the Sabbath, our Sabbath best.
Sabbath best. I've heard that phrase
for Sunday keeping church. They even call it their Sunday best.
Sunday best, absolutely. Who are you dressing up for? Is God impressed by your threads?
God's not looking at the outward. He looks at the heart. He looks at the heart.
I get that it breeds a spirit of reverence. I do get that.
It gives a specialness to the day.
A specialness to the day.
Or to the act of worship.
But when yes, absolutely, to the act of worship. But when the focus is more on the dress, on the clothing, than it is on the act of worship, well, we've completely missed the point. Can someone worship in cutoffs and a tank top? Yes. Yes. I've been known to say I will gladly wear a suit and a tie for a funeral, because the funeral is for the people. Mm-hmm. When I come to church, I'm coming to, I get that I'm setting an example for others as well, but I'm coming to worship. I'm not coming to impress God with my clothing, how much I spent on this or that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Going on to Thursday. Because this, I really appreciated this day, this one. It's Isaiah 58, 13 and 14.
Oh, yes.
And it's in this context, a brand new meaning to these verses. Not that the old meaning that I had was bad, but this is, I think, very rich. And let's read those verses from the New American Standard. If, because of the Sabbath, you restrain your foot from doing as you wish on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a pleasure, and the holy day of the Lord honorable, and honor it, desisting from your own ways, and seeking your own pleasure, and speaking your own word, then you will take delight in the Lord. And I will make you ride on the heights of the earth, and I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.
That is a tremendous if-then statement.
Yes, this is God himself speaking.
Yeah.
And I like asking this question. And I'm not bad-mouthing going to church.
Okay.
The best Sabbath day you ever had, was it at church?
Probably not. If I sat and really applied myself to thinking about that, I'd say probably not.
We have a friend who, she was a Sunday, she went to church on Sundays.
Okay.
But Sabbath day, and what we call Sabbath, she calls Saturday.
Sure.
She and her church, or several members of her church, would set up a feeding line and feed the homeless, or feed the people, anybody who needed it, really. But then they had a warehouse where they could come and pick up clothes for free, also. And they did that as one of their acts of worship, I'm going to call it. They did that on Saturday. And I really got to thinking, man, that she's worshiping better than I am on the Sabbath, actually. In this context of what we've been talking about,
I can't argue with that, what you just said. She's worshiping.
In the context that we're talking about, though, these verses, it's not just about the Sabbath day.
No.
It's about the worship.
Sure.
Okay? And I think the Sabbath is a day of worship. But worship in the sense that we're not traditionally set to think about, come to church, sing a song, hear a sermon. It's actually sometimes being the sermon by helping others.
David, one of the most, I can't say this is the best Sabbath I've had, but an extremely satisfying Sabbath. I passed with my tool belt around my waist and a hammer in my hand, helping a group of Baptist youth build a house for, it was up in Michigan at the time, for Habitat for Humanity. Had a fantastic Sabbath day.
Wasn't it?
No sermon, no songs. Fantastic Sabbath. Good worship.
But no Sabbath, no songs, but rich worship.
Oh my goodness, rich, yes. Yes. Tremendous fellowship.
And that's because you were doing it for someone else. You weren't doing it for yourself.
So that goes back to seeking my own pleasure, right?
Yeah.
Or setting, there's different.
Don't pursue
words,
your own interests.
Interest,
or doing as you wish on the holy day.
Don't use my holy day for personal advantage. But here, see, there's the other part of that if-then statement. And I wrote down this, is that we're cautioned about seeking after our own and I wrote temporal benefit. And as a child growing up, I would sometimes hear, whether at church or elsewhere, that you're not supposed to try to have your own fun. And I thought, well, what fun is that? How can the Sabbath be good? And it's the then statement. God says, if you will do this, then you will have fun.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So it's not that we aren't supposed to have fun. It says, I wrote, however, the things that offer eternal benefit to us and divine peace and joy will often carry temporal benefit to us as well. But we're not seeking it for ourselves first, even though it does come to us.
I think I know what that delight is. It's like, for example, someone, if you ever get a chance to help a pregnant woman change her tire in the rain.
Okay, all right.
And you do that and you're all soaking wet, but you're smiling. Afterwards, you're smiling.
Yeah.
I believe that is the feeling that Adam and Eve had in Eden all the time before the fall. Because they were living the way they were meant to live. They were living for each other and for God.
Wow. What a feeling.
And
all the time.
All the time. And that's it's sin that kind of dampened that feeling. Play on words because of the rain thing. But
Okay.
that put a dampen. And this is what Jesus is wanting us to do. He gave us an example of how to live as a person, as a human being on earth. This is the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Helping each other.
Yeah.
And let that feeling be your reward.
Someone who says, I would get bored in heaven. How could you possibly get, that feeling, that imagery you used, helping, there's a pregnant woman with a blown out tire and you are soaking wet, you're cold, maybe some skinned knuckles, and yet you're smiling because you just feel good over what you have done. How could you get tired of that feeling?
Yeah, you got to think, I'm wet, I'm cold, but my knees are dirty, these pants are ruined.
Best 2 hours I've ever had.
All worth it. Totally worth it.
I could never get rid of that. I could never get tired of that feeling.
You'd go back to that feeling a lot to feed on that. There's a couple stories in the question at the bottom.
There are.
A couple stories. The one in Mark 3:1-5. This is Jesus. He entered the synagogue, and a man who was there, whose hand was withered, and they were watching him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. He said to the man with the withered hand, "Get up and come forward." And he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath, or to do harm, to save a life, or to kill?" But they kept silent.
Yeah, they wouldn't answer
It's one of those
him.
rhetorical questions that they cannot answer.
They couldn't answer it, correct.
Not in the way that they were thinking, anyway.
Right.
After looking around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out, and his hand was restored.
We don't often see the word angrily or anger in association with Jesus. It's not often. It happens, but it's not very often.
I think he was our perfect example in everything, and including when and what to get angry at.
Sure.
And he was angry because they wouldn't answer him. The true answer is, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
However, that went against their time-honored traditions.
Yes. I got to wonder about this man. He seems like a plant. The man with the withered hand.
Perhaps.
And I often reference the Luke version of this because it's Dr. Luke who mentioned it's his right hand.
Oh, okay. The doctor would notice.
Yes,
okay,
the doctor would notice that because you don't want to cut off the wrong hand. But
the right hand was the hand that you used socially.
That was the socially acceptable greeting hand. Mm-hmm. The left hand was used for the necessary.
Absolutely, very
human
not socially acceptable at all. He was an outcast.
He was an outcast. Yeah. So I gotta think, if he was in the crowd, if he was not a plant, here's how he was sitting. Kind of high.
Very hidden.
Jesus saw him.
Yeah.
And called him out.
In a very public manner.
In front of everybody.
Yes.
And this man's going to be a lesson. Now, the other thing that we need to point out, A hand is often a symbol of doing something, physically doing a
Sure.
task.
Sure. Action.
So he healed his hand on the Sabbath to say, it's okay to do stuff on the Sabbath.
Yes. Or and in this sense, doctors were not permitted to make house calls of that nature. So he was, according to the time-honored traditions, he was working on the Sabbath. Working on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
He was breaking the law,
Yeah.
the traditional law
Yeah.
that they'd constructed.
And
And yet he did it in such a way that, like you said, they couldn't answer him.
the word here, his hand was restored.
Yeah.
And I've often thought, it's not just his hand was restored. He was a social pariah.
Yeah.
He couldn't even shake hands. He couldn't eat at the same table with other people.
And suddenly,
His whole life was restored to him.
Jesus gave him his life back.
Wow. And the things that Jesus can do. The other story, John 5, and I know we're over time. Let's see. Now in Jerusalem by the sheep gate there's a pool, and this is John 5, 1 through 17. Bethesda having 5 porticos, and these porticos lay a multitude of those who were sick, blind, limping, or paralyzed. Now a man who had been there been ill for 38 years, Jesus, upon seeing this man lying there and knowing that he had already been in that condition for a long time, said to him, "Do you want to get well?" The sick man, that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk."
Okay, can I get you to
Yes,
pause right there for
yes.
just a minute? I find it very interesting that Jesus asks him a very direct question. Would you like to be healed? And the man seemingly answers the wrong question. He starts talking about, I want to do it myself, but I can't. I can't get there. It's an interesting
It's
thing that
interesting
happens
also,
here.
we can take that point further. He was waiting for someone else to help him.
He
Another
was.
man to help him. So we can't do it for ourselves, and no one else can do it for us.
Nope.
Only Jesus. Get up, pick up your pallet, and walk. Verse 9, immediately the man became well and picked up his pallet and began to walk. Now it was a Sabbath on that day. So the Jews were saying to the man who was cured, "It is a Sabbath, and it is not permissible for you to carry your pallet."
I find that incredibly disingenuous.
Wow.
That this man who's been unable to walk for 38 years,
They're missing the forest for the trees.
everyone must know him,
Yes.
including them.
Yes.
And they see him carrying a bedroll, which is again a traditional law he's breaking. And they make no comment about, wow, that's quite something you're walking.
No.
You know it's against the law to carry that.
Carry your pallet.
Yeah.
Well, and let's finish the story.
Okay, I'm sorry. I had to stop you
But he
again.
answered to them, "He who made me well," he starts off with that.
Yeah.
"He who made me well was the one who said to me, 'Pick up your pallet and walk.'" Then they asked him, "Who is this man that said to you, 'Pick it up and walk'?" Not who made you well.
No.
Who is the man
No.
that...
They caused you to break this law. Yes.
But the man who was healed
Again.
did not know who it was, for Jesus had slipped away while there was a crowd in that place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "Behold, you have become well. Do not sin anymore, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and informed the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. For this reason, the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing things on a Sabbath. But he answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I myself am working." And the Message says, but Jesus defended himself, "My Father is working straight through, even on the Sabbath."
Yeah.
So am I.
And so am I. Yeah.
I sometimes write little devotionals, and I wrote one about this scar. People ask about my scar.
Okay.
And I'm able to tell them my glory story about this scar, that God pulled me through a really rough spot. I kind of liken it to this man carrying his pallet. Jesus had him carry his pallet so they could ask him, not "Why are you carrying the pallet?" is because now he's not known as the man who was on the pallet. Now he's known as the man who's carrying the pallet.
Right. Right.
And wow, what a miracle. The Pharisees completely missed it.
They missed it, yes.
But not everyone did, because you can bet when those Pharisees asked him, who told you to carry the pallet? Other people were listening, because that area was full of people who were sick.
Can you imagine?
So those people were listening. How to get well?
Yeah.
How to get
Who did that?
Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But for different reasons. Though,
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Because they wanted to be well too.
Yes. Yeah.
It's that question.
It was the focus. The focus was different. They recognized something that, again, and I want to take it back to now. They recognized something that could fill that hole in their hearts.
Oh.
Whereas the pious, the righteous, simply recognized something that was going against the way they thought it should go.
That question, and that's an excellent point. It really does go to that question that Jesus asked him. Do you want to be made well?
Okay.
Let's define well. Is it just not being sick? Did Jesus just heal the sickness and that's it?
Much, much deeper than
I
that.
bet this man didn't even have a pimple afterwards. He was restored.
Yeah.
Just like the man with the withered
the hand restored.
Completely restored. Completely healthy. Complete. And we could just leave it at that.
Sure.
That hole was filled.
Yeah. Yeah.
By something he couldn't do for himself, something no one else could do for him.
No.
It's kind of a rhetorical question. Do you want that hole in your heart filled?
The answer is always yes. And I think, like the man with the hand, perhaps didn't at first recognize just how much Jesus had done for him, and then it began to dawn on him everything that had been given back to him. Same with this man carrying the mat. Wow, I can walk again. Wait a minute, so much more than this. So, yes, Jesus can fill that hole. I think people don't even recognize how much restoration happens when we allow him to do that for us. We may think of one specific aspect of it. I'm restored in this, and then you begin to see the richness of the restoration that's happens throughout your life.
Yeah. And that brings us back to the discussion about the memory text. Extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul. There's how the afflicted soul is satisfied. We've been saying all along, filling that hole, that relationship with God.
Out of the abundance.
Only thing.
Of what we have recognized the restoration.
And the reason I call it a God-shaped hole is because it's not shaped like a vodka bottle.
It's not.
It's not shaped like a handsome man or beautiful woman.
Or much money or whatever.
Or anything else.
Yeah.
Pills. It's not shaped like that. No. It's shaped. It's the shape that only God can fit.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that satisfies the afflicted soul. Afflicted because we talked out earlier about how are we ever. We want to fill this hole, but we just we have this anguish almost about
not even sure how to or who can do it or what can do it.
Which direction to go into.
And I do think, I believe, not even think, I believe that love can point people in the right direction, even if they don't fully understand what that means or how much restoration that's going to bring to them. When we demonstrate the love of God, and we can only do that as we allow him to pour into us so that it pours out, but as we demonstrate that love, that can speak to the hole that is in other people's hearts in the way that nothing else can.
Yeah.
And lead them in the direction of allowing God to fill it more and more.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you mentioned do we need to go to Friday or can we go back to the homework?
Let's go to the homework.
Okay, all right.
This is on Tuesday's further discussion question at the bottom. One of the crucial lessons that comes from these texts points to the difference between being merely religious and truly being a follower of Christ. There's a difference.
Oh, yes. Yes, there is.
How do we see the difference there? How do we as individuals face the same danger as the individuals presented here, which is believing that our religious rituals somehow show we are really following the Lord as he asks us to?
That's
This one reminds me of the rich young ruler who came to Jesus and asked, what do I have to do to go to heaven?
Sure.
And Jesus says, pretty much it's pretty easy. And he recited the commandments toward fellow men.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Love your neighbor, honor your mother and father.
Absolutely.
Don't lie, don't steal. To a point, because Jesus didn't mention the commandment that says, do not covet.
That's true. He didn't say that one.
Because the other things we can see when we honor our mother and father. We can see that we're not killing anyone, that we're not lying.
Yeah.
But we can't see what's in the heart where covetousness is.
Sure.
And then Jesus said, to be perfect.
Yeah. Because the young men said, all these things I've been doing since I was young. Yeah.
And Jesus said, to be perfect, go and sell everything you have and give it to the poor.
And
come and follow me.
And those final 3 words wrap up the first 4 commandments.
Yeah.
Come and follow me.
Follow me.
Yeah. People say, why didn't Jesus quote it? Well, he did.
Yeah.
But it was by condensing it down into those things. You get rid of the other things that you have. Come and follow me. That's the first 4.
So what does this question make everyone think about? Comments, guys. Comments.
Please do.
How do we face the same danger? Are we into religious rituals or into following Christ?
And I think the answer is probably yes. Sometimes we allow ourselves, not even, that, and again, you brought that up so well a while back about not using words that are passive, because it's never passive, it's always active. So I want to change what I said, not allowing ourselves to focus on the wrong thing, but by focusing on the wrong thing and letting our religious rituals become habit.
Yes.
Once it becomes a habit, I think we are
really hard to break.
In extreme danger of making it a simple routine.
And then it actually becomes our religion, our God, that we worship those rules instead of God. We forget why those rituals exist to begin with.
Well,
Isaiah giving and giving. This is an awesome story.
Indeed. Please comment down below in the comments section. It's a fantastic question. It's found on the bottom end of Tuesday's lesson. We would love to hear what you have to think about that.
Yes.
David, as we close, would you mind closing us out with prayer?
Sure, absolutely. Let's bow our heads. God our Father, we thank you so much for the lesson for today, the study for today, and the discussion that we had today. Father, we've learned so much, each of us, and we pray it brings us closer to you. Each time we read a lesson, each time we read a Bible verse, Father, we pray it brings us closer to you. We pray, Father, that our religion doesn't take the place of our God. We can fall into that trap so easily, Father. It is a danger for us. We ask that you help us keep our focus on you, that we make a decision for you, that we are there for others as well, in a true sense of worship, and even and especially, Father, on the Sabbath.
Amen.
Bless us and keep us now close to you. In your name, amen.
All right. As always, we sure look forward to seeing you again next week, and may God bless you.
God bless.